Good morning, friends. Welcome. Matt Greer here. Welcome to Monday Morning Music with Matt. Hope you are all well this morning. It's another dreary day in Albuquerque. I rode my bike to church again this morning, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. And so hope you are enjoying the day and having a good beginning to your week. We are continuing kind of in our journey of how we get back to doing live music around here in general, and especially in worship. And I was very happy yesterday that we had a small ensemble singing that for the first time in about a year included not only members of our music staff, but also, as I call them, civilians, our volunteer chancel choir members, who are going to be making up those small ensembles that will be singing in worship through the month of May at least. And then, of course, we're evaluating where we go from there. So hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for your kindness and understanding and support as we are continuing to figure out how to do live worship and live stream at the same time. I'm going to start, as always, by playing a bit of lovely music, and this seemed just the thing to hear this morning for a couple of reasons. I'm going to play, before I welcome our guest, this is a clip from a Music from St. John's live stream concert that occurred last November, I believe. And this is Roxandra Marquardt, violinist, and Amy Greer, pianist, playing a piece of Arvo Pärt called Spiegel im Spiegel. Hope you enjoy this. So beautiful. Arvo Pärt Spiegel im Spiegel, one of the reasons that I thought to play that excerpt this morning was that today is Ruxandra Marquardt, the violinist's birthday. So I don't know if you're watching or not, Ruxandra, but happy birthday and thank you for that beautiful music. As you are enjoying the music and maybe enjoying the conversation I'm about to have this morning, please pop your comments in the chat. And if you have questions, especially for our guest, we will try and get to them. Speaking of our guest, I think he is standing by and ready to join the conversation, joining us all the way from the United Kingdom. Welcome, Paul Smith. Good morning.
How about that? Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
I surprisingly can. We have a bit of a gale whipping up outside, so if I do disappear, that's because, you know, bad weather. But
I was going to ask because it's a beautiful day here today, but not so much there.
Well, you know, I find when we're in Albuquerque, it's always beautiful, isn't it, Matt? It's one of the reasons I love the place.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah, but here today started off sunny. I'm glad that we've turned this music session into a weather report. Started off sunny. I won't do the degrees because we work in Celsius and that might confuse all of your...
It confuses us over here.
But yeah, the wind is coming in from the southwest and bringing with it some worrying weather, I think. So I'm excited that after this conversation I get to zip out into it, put my mask on and go and brave the great British public transport, which we could also talk for a very, very long time about, I'm sure, if you wanted to get off subjects.
I'll bet, yeah. And I was about to introduce you as being in London, but we have a church member here, Jean Jones. I don't know if she's watching this morning, but she is very proud that her hometown is Reading. And she would slap me next time I saw her if I didn't say that, Paul, you're actually in Reading, and that's where you make your home, right?
I am in Reading, indeed. It's a fine place, actually much maligned, really, by others in the UK, but I think unfairly so. And in fact, you know, an old capital. I think one of our very ancient kings is buried in Reading. So there you go.
Awesome.
And to make it more trendy, we also got a Banksy recently. And do you guys know Banksy over there?
We do know Banksy, the artist. Yes, right. So and you have one.
Yes, he appeared and did a drawing on the old prison wall of an escaping convict escaping on a typewriter in reference to Oscar Wilde, who was the most famous resident, I think, of Reading Jail. And then in typical Reading fashion, Banksy himself then got graffitied. Then the council decided to put up a small fence around it to protect it from others and security. And so Banksy popped back in the middle of the night some weeks later and found a different spot in Reading to redo the bit that had been graffitied. And so there you go, not one but two Banksies in Reading.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. So I know we're here to talk about music, but I was going to ask just as an icebreaker question, because you're here and actually you're there and people are wondering things like this. So how are things going with the monarchy, Brexit, and the pandemic?
In that order, monarchy's not had, obviously, the best few weeks. Brexit, it continues, and pandemic we seem to be doing a bit better at, so there's that.
Good, I'm glad. Well, thanks for being with us this morning. That's all the time we have. Yeah, so I'm so pleased to be talking with you this morning because, of course, you're a good friend to us here at St. John's, and the reason that we met you, the very first thing that brought you here is, of course, that you're the co-founder of an a cappella group called Voces 8. And we were just reminiscing about the fact that I think Voces 8 has been here on visits 5 times. And the very first one was 10 years ago, 2011, over Valentine's Day. You all came for the first time.
I mean, it hasn't got any better than that first visit, has it? That was a real humdinger of an affair. But we love coming back to Albuquerque, and yeah, we are missing that opportunity, obviously, in our current COVID world, but we hope to be back as soon as possible.
Right. Yeah. And we'll talk about the educational work and the music and stuff like that. But just so people might get to know you a little bit, tell us how you got involved in singing and in choral music. Are you from a musical family?
That's very kind of you to ask such a leading question, Matt. I know that you've met my parents, so I just
have.
hope they're not watching right now, as I slander them and say no. They were both very keen amateur musicians. So my dad used to play the piano, and still does on occasion. And my mum was something of a songbird herself. She used to love singing, and I remember Barney and I growing up in our very early years, before we got into any of this choral music, we used to sing old-time music hall. Did you know this? Have I talked to you about this? I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
So we would be dressed up in all sorts of ye olde London town kind of outfits and sing fantastic songs like The Lambeth Walk and I Live in Trafalgar Square with 4 lions to guard me. Some absolute classics. And these would keep people entertained wherever we lived. That was actually growing up in the Lake District. We did quite a lot of that. And then actually it was by chance that Barney and I ended up going to the choir school at Westminster Abbey, because my parents were moving to London with us. My dad's job was changing. And so they met at Westminster Abbey and they saw a poster that said, "Could this be your son?" And a picture of a chorister. And they clearly thought, absolutely, yes. So one hastily arranged singing lesson later, I had my audition, and I believe the comment from the feedback I got from Martin Neary and those who'd been auditioning was that I couldn't really sing, but I was quite good at the piano and could read music really well, so they'd teach me how to sing because that was their job. And that's how it began. Such wonderful feedback has really continued throughout my career.
Well, we could talk for a long time about this experience that both you and your brother Barney had, but how long you were in residence living in the school attached to Westminster Abbey for the choristers? How long were you there singing in that choir?
So I think you normally stay for about 5 years. You tend to start when you're kind of 8, 9 years old, and you stay till you're about 13 until your voice changes. And at that point you become not as valuable to them, understandably. So in fact my voice actually changed in my last term. So I stopped singing in the choir in my very last term at the school, as I was just 13 and a bit. And before heading off to my next school, they allow you, if you're not in the choir anymore, to do all sorts of fun things, like to sit in the organ loft for all of the services and turn pages for the organist. And that's one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, because Matt, you'll know I'm not a very tall person. And having to turn pages,
I wasn't going to mention it because people can't tell, but that's true. You're not a very tall person. Go ahead.
But trying to turn pages as a small boy, when you have Martin Baker, who is really quite the most amazing organist, sat there, and there's all these manuals in the way, and you've got to wait, you've got to try and read the music. I still have nightmares about trying to be a page turner. But the other fun thing they allow you to do is to be a member of the Brotherhood, and that is sounds very Dan, what's his face, Da Vinci Code kind of vibe. But actually, it just means you get to carry the candles around the Abbey. But you get to wear a really cool outfit when you do that. So I see. Very much enjoyed my time at the Abbey. And
as a member of the Abbey Choir, what is the regular? Are you singing evensong every day? Are you singing Sunday services and daily services? What does that look like?
I think you do on average maybe 8 a week. So
wow.
Wednesdays would be the chorister's day off. And aside from that, you do evensong every day. And then on Sunday, you do matins and Eucharist as well. But they were very nice. We tended to have visiting preachers coming in on Sunday afternoons, and knowing that we'd already sat through a couple of sermons that day, they would allow the choristers to bring a book to evensong. So it was the one time of the week that you could sit and get through Tolkien whilst being talked about other things. I shouldn't say that probably, but
no, you shouldn't. Those poor preachers. Yeah.
Well, they had 8 minutes, Matt, because we're Church of England, and we think 8 minutes is quite long enough for.
You think 8 minutes is a long sermon? Is that how?
That was the rules, but most of the visiting preachers tended to stretch that by a number of times over. I think the longest was 45 minutes, and I'd got through a good couple of chapters in that time. So
I'm sure. Yeah. So I want to move on to talking about Voces 8 and how that all started. But by way of getting into that, I'm going to play a video. This is the Voces 8 video that you sent that I think was just released a couple of weeks ago. Do you want to set this up and tell us what this is?
I can try. So one of our singers, in fact, our only American singer is one of our tenors, Blake Morgan. And as well as being a singer, it's really nice in Voces 8 when you find people that don't just sing but have other talents too. And he is a marvelous arranger. And he's done this arrangement of Finlandia, the Sibelius tune that you'll all know. But not only has he arranged the music, he's actually also written some of the text. So some of the text is as you'll know it, and I'm just going to check. And the verses 1 and 2 are by Lloyd Stone, and then verse 3 is by Blake himself. And this is an arrangement that he did for Voces 8, which, as you say, came out just a couple of weeks ago.
Lovely. Let's listen.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is.
They're pretty good.
They're not too bad, are they? Really? And
That's beautiful.
That song. Yeah.
Really gorgeous. And that last verse is beautiful as well. That's a beautiful piece of work.
Yeah, I think the way he's captured the text and the harmonic progressions in there, it feels to me very much like a Blake Morgan take on that piece, which I think is nice. It's a nice thing to do, isn't it? I mean, apart from the fact he gave himself the solo at the beginning, but we don't talk about it. Very
well, when you're the arranger and part of the group,
you can. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But no, I think it's really beautiful. So yes, that was I very much enjoyed, I should say, the Arvo Pet that you kicked off with. I thought that's such a gorgeous piece, and
it's just absolutely, there's something about that piece. I agree. Yeah. So I do want to ask you obligatory questions about how Voce 8 started and how things have progressed. But seeing that clip reminds me that you are, we have all been dealing with this extremely strange and difficult situation, particularly as choral musicians. And you all went from having a very busy touring schedule all over the world and projects booked years out to having to figure out how to continue doing what you're doing without being able to travel and to do all of that. And it's been amazing to me, Paul, the quality of stuff that you've continued to put out from the very beginning, continuing to do educational live videos that people can take part in, to the Live from London series that you've done, to videos like that. I mean, it's been really, really amazing. And I'm sure it's been a huge learning curve as far as video and sound production and all of that. So when you look back on the last year, I mean, are you kind of amazed?
I think so. Yeah, and we've done a lot of that learning in a very public space. There's been moments when live concerts with 1,000 or more people watching have just gone. so yeah, you deal with those situations,
right? Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I mean, you have to try and make the best of wherever you are, don't you? And I think that's been our take on the last year. As you say, we've not been able to do anything that we would normally do, but we have been lucky that we had a great foundation in place, that we had an opportunity to use the space that we work in London to do something a bit different and to extend the core of essence of what we do is about giving concerts and about inspiring people through education work. And with that very simple nutshell of an idea, we've just expanded it and actually tried as much as possible to keep people, just like you've been doing as well, keep people feeling like they can connect somehow to live music and to feeling like it's going to come back again. But whilst it's not, there's still not something just there, but something really good that's there. And I think that's been for us the real focus. We pride ourselves on really dedicating ourselves to our art. So we're trying to take that idea into the online work that we've done as well. And Barney has bought a lot of video cameras in the last year, Matt. I'm the chief exec of the foundation, so Barney goes and spends the money and then apologizes to me later. That's roughly how it works. But no, it's been a real learning curve. And just as when we finished today, because we couldn't be working with the University of Shenandoah, which we were planning to do this year, we've run an online course with them, which is concluding in about 4 hours time, with them singing some of their songs that we've been coaching them from distance, and we're going to sing to them from the center. And yeah, I'm very proud of the whole team. It's a huge effort from a lot of people to do what we've done in the last year, but to think that arts organizations, including your good self with Quintessence, have been involved and partners. We've just made so many friends and felt so connected to so many people. And some of the artists that I've got to see up close and personal as a result has been really kind of fun. So I can't complain in some ways about the musical experiences I've had in the last year. I have definitely seen more other performers than I would normally do in a year because
right, yeah,
so them in the environment. But
yeah, there is something about the fact that geography is no longer an issue. When you start to think in those terms, then a lot of things become possible, right?
Yeah, and I think, of course, as you know as well, we want to be back in a live space as soon as possible because there is just a different feeling. And at the same time, we've all learned so much this year that there's no reason, I don't think, why the two different elements can't coexist, and so we hope that we'll get back to touring. But the idea that, you know, we've had 75 different countries have been tuning into these concerts we've been doing, and those people most of the time probably can't come and see a live Watchers 8 concert. So if there's a chance to have them still able to connect with us and share our music, then that's a real bonus, and it doesn't
Absolutely.
replace live music, it can be alongside it.
Right. So give us the thumbnail about how all of this started, Paul. You and your brother Barney are the co-founders of Watches 8. And if I remember right, this was not necessarily at the beginning a grand plan to take over choral music in the world. This was kind of a lark with a bunch of friends getting together to sing, right?
Yeah, we most of the time we still try to have a lark as well. That's what it's kind of all about. Yeah, it was exactly that. We were young, idiotic, I'm sure, and came up with stupid names like Voces Cantables and Voces 8, and then have lived to regret it ever since. But yes, it was a group of friends singing together. That's how it started. Most of us had been singing in a youth choir called the Millennium Youth Choir, which is run by the Royal Schools of Church Music, and we'd hit the upper age limit, so we'd had to just go off and do our own thing. So we started a bigger chamber choir, and that became Voces 8 when we got invited to a competition in Italy, and in 2005 this was, and we got there and we realized, because we thought this was a great holiday opportunity, so somewhere just outside Venice, and so all we had to do was sing a bit, and that sounded brilliant. Then we got there and we realized it was quite a serious competition, so we did some last minute practice, as anyone who's ever crammed for an exam will know how that goes, and ended up winning quite a lot of awards with the chamber choir and with Voces 8, and actually that's how Voces 8 was born. And people ask, in fact we were doing a session last night with singers in Germany, and they were asking, where did you come up with this stupid name? It sounds Italian but you're British. And we said, well, actually it was because we were British but we were in Italy when we came up with it, so we amalgamate the two. But yes, it really started as a group of friends, and it wasn't probably until about a year or two later that Barney and I thought, let's really try and do something. So I quit my job, and I was working in Ireland for the Irish Chamber Orchestra, running their education and development department, and so I'd had a kind of insight into how the world of arts works and the impact that arts education can have on people. And that, coupled with Barney stepping in as the artistic director, and the two of us really just kind of fired it up. And the original group that we had, actually, we owe a huge debt of thanks to, because in those early days, it was really not something that we did to make money. It was something that we were really building the foundations from nothing. And we got lucky, really, that we had a core membership who I think there was a core membership when we first came to Albuquerque. There was that group of us that in that first visit who I think were together, and there were no changes for 4 or 5 years in the ensemble. And I think it was that time that allowed us to develop the kind of signature sound of the group and the signature style and approach of the ensemble. And then from there, we then fed that into our education work. We've all of us in the past been passionate educators. And out of all of this, then about 5 years after we'd started the foundation, Apollo 5 was born as well. So we ended up with 2 ensembles, and both have their I'd say very different and unique qualities about them, aside from the number of singers. But so there's been a sense, I think, of organic growth to the foundation, but always very centrally those 2 ideas: let's give world-class concerts and let's have a world-class education program. And that drives us.
Well, Apollo 5 was just here. I mean, we think very fondly about Apollo 5's visit last February, because it was like the last thing that happened before lockdown. And of course, we had a wonderful time with them. They gave a marvelous concert for us, sang in worship for us, and then we were able to put them in a residency with schools. And so I have an Apollo 5 clip I would like to play. What is this that they're going to be singing, Paul?
I believe they're going to be singing "Where All Roses Go." I hope. I think that's what I sent you.
Yes, yes.
And this is actually the title track of their new album, which you can find on Spotify and all those usual places. It was actually released as a series of EPs, and this particular track I just absolutely adore. It's a song by Michael McGlynn, who people, if they're familiar with Anuna, the Irish vocal group, will have come across him. He's a lovely composer, and he's a really nice human, frankly. And he's one of the people I've got to know properly over the last year as well. And Anuna was involved in our Live from London festival. So alongside his compositional work, we've also got to know his performance work as well. And I think this song that he's written is absolutely stunning. It's just beautiful.
Beautiful. Let's hear it. This is Apollo 5.
Voices of the sweet birds above the wailing of the nor shall he know when loud much blows those slanting snows her fan fashion. Blow into flame the golden cup of many an upset Soon the swallows will be flying south. The wind will north together in the snow. Even the roses split on youth's red mouth will soon blow down the road. All roses soon blow But when the dark can leaves the moor, and pastures pour with greedy weeds, perhaps he'll hear her low at dawn, lifting her horn in pleasant meads. Soon the swallows will be flying south. The wind will north together in the snow. Even the roses split on youth's red mouth will soon blow down the road. All roses soon blow down
So beautiful.
It's gorgeous, isn't it? And I hope you were also appreciating that expert camera work there, Matt, because that was our studio's team. And I think I was doing lots of blurring and unblurring of candles for most of that session. It was really
Wow.
great
That's
fun.
telling that they
feel-
said, Paul, you can be the one to blur the image.
I get all the best jobs.
Yeah, really, really lovely. And
Yeah, it's back, isn't it?
and as I mentioned, Apollo 5 was with us in February of 2019, and not only did a concert for us, but also did educational work in Albuquerque schools. And that has been, every time Voces 8 has been with us, very much part of what we have been very proud to be able to do was to offer residencies to local choirs. And I am going to, as we chat, just pop up a couple of photos reminiscing in some of your time over the last 10 years working with, that's our choir room, of course, at St. John's.
Look at that.
And so we've had an opportunity. Oh, yes. And there's you and
Thanks.
Rob with the Young Musicians Initiative. Yeah, it's just.
I didn't realize you'd been taking so many pictures of us, Matt.
Yeah, not just me, but they have been collecting. And it's such a wonderful thing that from the very beginning, that was part of the DNA of who you all are, because what has kept us bringing you back, in addition to just the extraordinary music that you make, is that you really are up for just about anything as far as working with children, youth, adults, and getting people to sing together. It's just been marvelous to be a part of that with you.
Well, I have to say in return that for us, there are few partners who've been crazy enough to have us back as many times as you have, Matt. And I think what I love actually about the way we do things with you in Albuquerque is there's such an understanding of how broad a community there can be that is taking part in this. So that is from the youngest to the least young, and everyone in between, but also thinking about people at the very beginning of their musical experiences through to aspiring professionals and professional performers, those who are amateurs, those who dedicate their lives to things, those who are singers, those who are not singers. There's this holistic approach to the projects we've been able to do together, which for me are among the most memorable I think we've done as a foundation. And I think with both ensembles being there, we've also brought the Voces 8 scholars there, I seem to remember. And so
yes, tell us. I was about to ask you a leading question about that. Sorry. One of the initiatives you've come up with in the last several years is a scholars program. Tell us about that.
Well, that's designed for, in the US we have 12 at the moment scholars, and in the UK we have 8, and that's designed for those aspiring young professionals. So most of them have come out of at least one of their university programs and might either be between going back in to get a DMA or something, or maybe they've come out of that as well and are thinking about the world as a professional performer. And so the Voces 8 scholars gives them an opportunity to experience all the different facets we think make up what we believe to be a 21st century musician. So how to be a performer, how to be an educator, how to be involved in your community, how to be a recording artist, all the different elements, things that we try to give the scholars practical experience of. And in the last year, that's also developed to how to do things on Zoom, because, you know, that was clearly the one thing we were all absolutely missing before this pandemic. But no, so what I actually also love, Matt, about the partnership we have with you guys is that we've had scholars coming back to be involved in your summer programs independently of us being there. And for me, that's a step I'm hoping to encourage other places to do as well. This idea that being a part of our scholars program doesn't mean you just get to hang out with like Voces 8 and me for a bit of the year, but actually that you're then building connections and going and doing work that is putting you on the pathway to a proper professional career. So that's the very top end, if you like, of our education program. And it's in many ways obviously the most difficult to fund. We try and make it absolutely free for all of the scholars, so we fly them where we host them, and there are not many organizations I think that actually provide that kind of opportunity for free to people in the US. So I'm grateful to you and those who've helped us make that possible. We've been lucky to have some very good partners and collaborators, but I think it's important, if we're going to make the arts actually live again post-pandemic, that I mean, you know, those of us who had careers in the arts have had a tough time, but those who were just beginning to have a career in the arts, I mean, they will undoubtedly have been hit the worst. And so to find ways to bring young artists to the fore and to support them in the years to come, I think is going to be crucial to the re-emergence and the basic well-being and health of the arts.
Right. And one thing you alluded to that's really a wonderful part of this is that you, from fairly early on, I think, have had a charitable foundation attached to the work that you do. And that's a tremendous help, I think, to folks who are looking to partner with you, folks that are looking to present the scholars, the different groups, and to allow you to be in a lot of different places that you might not be otherwise.
Yeah, and actually, in a, I don't know if it's selfish, but in a self-preservation sort of way, the thing that's been a huge benefit to us in the last year is the fact that we did have a charitable foundation, and that we are set up with our groups and with our team as a foundation where everyone is employed. You're an employee, and that has meant in the last year that actually we've been able to be on the job retention scheme, which the UK's run, and actually been able to be supported. And because we've spent 15 years with trustees guiding us and making sure we built up reserves and things like that, we were actually in a position where we could do some of the things you've alluded to earlier, because we could actually afford to live for a few more weeks. And actually we realized if we made an investment, that might be a way to generate income for not just us but the other artists we'd be able to support. And it kind of staggers me really that we've now supported over the last year, I think more than 400 artists have been employed effectively by the foundation, which is mind-boggling when you think normally we employ 13. So it's yeah, I can't quite believe those numbers most days, but that's been possible because of also the good people of Albuquerque, Matt. You know, you've had your support has made sure we have lots of subscribers in Albuquerque joining Live from London, which has been really important, and that has made a huge difference to the artists. It's not just asking for a handout; it's asking to be paid to do a job, and I think that's made people really, all of the artists really feel very valued and like it was an important experience to be involved with. So
absolutely, yeah, that's been so important in this time, as we've been trying to do that at St. John's as much as possible, is to try and find ways to provide work for musicians. It's a real thing. Yes, I would just mention that we are chatting about this partnership and what's going to happen in the future, and how we might continue this relationship and just be involved in your work is what I'll say in the coming years. And I'm very excited about that.
Me too, Matt. It's all top secret, of course, but I'm very excited about, if I do that.
That's why I'm being so vague. That's why,
so wonderfully vague. Gosh, we would be excellent spies, wouldn't we?
We would. So I also wanted to mention, and I think this has taken off for you in new ways since you actually stepped back from singing with the group, but you're a composer. And you've been composing a lot, and I like your music, Paul. I'll just say that.
Thanks, Matt. That's the first compliment you've ever given me, and you've done it in public. Bad luck.
So has that always been part of your toolkit, or is that fairly recent that you've been able to put more energy into it? Or
well, I think, as you say, like I've always tinkered a bit and kind of been thinking about it, but in the last few years since I stepped out of the singing role in Voces 8, it's something that I've become increasingly passionate about, and so I've had to develop from being introduced as a singer to now I regularly seem to get introduced as a composer, which is very nice. The first time it happened, I was really bad at it. I just kind of went, oh no, I just compose a bit, and I got told off very strongly afterwards. If you're introduced as a composer, you say you're a composer. Oh, sorry. So yes, I am now a composer, and I'm happy to say I'm even published and everything. And it's been, I mean, as a composer, for me, some of the things I enjoy most are working with other composers. So I think your good friend and my good friend Taylor Scott Davis has probably been on your virtual sofa before.
Yes, he has.
And one of the things I most enjoyed in this lockdown year was a collaboration we did for Live from London Christmas. We commissioned 6 pieces, all of which were actually published on the day of the performance by 6 different composers. And so we had, we'll have to see if we can remember them now. Jocelyn Hagan, who you've also had involved in your work in Albuquerque. Melissa Dunphy, also based in Philadelphia. Ken Burton and Roddy Williams. Like Roddy is a brilliant example of a Renaissance man, isn't he? Talk about a singer who can also compose. Oh my God, the stuff he does is amazing. And then Taylor and myself, and it was just such a treat to be a part of this kind of collaborative, collective process of composing. I loved it, and so yes, I do love composing, and I'm excited to say some more things are underway. But once more, they're top secret until at least next week.
Okay. I want to play a beautiful example of your work. And this is a Nunc Dimittis that you composed. The recording that I'm going to play is a Voces 8 singing it. But we did this here when you were here a couple of years ago with the scholars, if I'm not mistaken. I believe I have conducted this piece.
I believe that you may be one of the leading interpreters of the work of Paul Smith, having done that, Matt.
I'm flattered.
And I think actually then this recording is in this beautiful space called Les Dominicains in a little town called Guebwiller, which has these incredible windows. It's an old monastery, and it's just the most gorgeous place to be able to perform. And Voces 8 we were there actually doing an education project, and in between working with about 500 local students and singers from the community, we had time to pop upstairs and do a recording of this, and it's come out rather well, I think.
I agree. Just help us out, those of us who have not sung Evensong every day for 12 years. Remind us of the text of the Nunc Dimittis.
Oh, now you're going to put me on the spot and I'm going to forget it all. This is the Song of Simeon. Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace.
Well done. Here's the Paul Smith Nunc Dimittis performed by Voces 8. Gorgeous.
I mean, if anyone's going to sing it, I think I'd be happy enough to hear they doing it. So I'm kind of lucky there.
I guess. Quick question from our organist, Jim Arend, that is, I think he popped up during the Blake Morgan piece, but applies to this one as well. How hard is it to sing and tune with those vibrato-free tones?
Well, that's a good question.
You spend some time working on intonation here and there, do you?
A little bit, perhaps. I'd say there was life's work in the answer to this question. Unfortunately, it's one of these interesting things, actually, that the way we sing, I think, is a beautiful thing when you hear those clean tones that actually allow the harmonics to ring and allow the sound in effect to tune as well as possible to make it feel like a bigger, richer sound than you might often hear with 8 voices. And actually the taking out of the vibrato is what gives you the ability to get the clarity of the tone and actually keep it there. It's obviously something to do with the voices that are now in the ensemble, in choosing voices that we think are going to blend well together. And you're probably not going to hear a Wagnerian singer doing this kind of work. But, there's certainly a sense of really trying very hard to, at the same time, control those sounds. And knowing as a singer when to use the natural color of the voice and when to hold it for the good of the ensemble is something that that Voces works really hard on. I would say, as I say, a life's work. And that's a question that we could go into great detail on. In fact, if you want to have some fun, you can delve into intonation workshops that Blake published online last month, which talk about just intonation and thinking about that system of tuning and how we.
He's a bit of a geek about that stuff, isn't he?
Yeah, I we have lots of geeks. Johnny's our early music geek who likes to create his own editions of pieces, and Blake likes to be geeky about just intonation. So we've all got to have our thing. Matt, what's yours?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm very much trying to figure it out.
You've got time.
Paul, this hour has gone as quickly as any hour I've ever spent with you. Actually, quicker, probably. So
that's because you played loads of other people singing.
That's right. So I know that you have to get from Reading to London so that you can lead a workshop. Who are you leading a workshop for this evening?
So this is some university students at Shenandoah University. We've been working with them for the last 4 weeks. I think we've got 3 or 4 different ensembles we've been coaching via Zoom, and we're having our showcase. I think it's actually going to be live online. So there's a link for it somewhere. I don't quite know how it's working out, but if you Shenandoah University, and I'm not sure how far their reach into the world of a cappella goes, but who knows? They are conducted by a former director of Chanticleer, Matt Altman, who's done lovely work with them. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be up to this evening.
Marvelous. Well, thanks for taking the time to spend with us in Albuquerque, and this will tide us over until you are able to come back in person, and we look forward to that and to future work together.
Well, Matt, I know you're doing amazing things, and it's a pleasure to be invited to be a part of this. And we didn't even talk about your kitten or anything, did we?
No, not yet. Well, next time. Well, next week is an hour with just my kitten. So
that will be the best interview, I suspect.
Well, thanks, Paul. You take care.
You too.
Be well. We'll see you soon. Bye. Thanks, friends, for joining us this morning. A couple of things coming up. This Saturday at 5 o'clock is live stream Jazz Vespers from the Sanctuary. Hope you will tune in for that. Next Monday morning, I have another special guest who is not in Albuquerque. Soprano Adrienne Danrich will be joining me from New York. Adrienne has been here a couple of times, and I'm so pleased to be able to sit and chat with her. And then 2 weeks from today, I'll be chatting with jazz vocalist and trumpeter Christine Fossen. And so hope you will tune in for that stuff. Thanks for being with us this morning, and have a lovely day. Bye.